I'm going to start with this one though, and I'm often asked by urban sketching colleagues about the way that I try to draw, and the observation is I can draw very quickly. Maybe that's true, but having drawn perspectives for many years, both of places that exist and things that don't exist, as you have an exercise your imagination when you're designing, you start to see things in perspective, and you can tell at a glance when that doesn't look right and why it doesn't look right. Some people, when they draw perspectives, know it's not right, but don't really know why it's not right. But as I always say, it's good to anchor yourself on the horizon, and basically you can tell where the horizon line is in this view, partly because the lines that are above the horizon line run down to it. You can see how it gets steeper as it goes up, and the ones below run up to it. So your eye level is more or less the level of the sill of these windows through here. So we can draw a line through there. I'm going to use these coloured pens just to try to explain a few things. So we can start ourselves on the drawing through here. The other thing that's worth contemplating is the shapes, or the alignments of the facades of the buildings. So let's start with this alignment here. We're looking along it. It's possibly a view that's like that. There's a corner of the building which might be shaved off slightly. So we're looking down at this facade through there. Now this facade here is not parallel to that facade, because if it was, we couldn't see it. I'll use a different colour. It runs out, I think, to something like this. And then the last building has lines like that, and it folds out again, so it strikes me as being something like this, and I suspect in plan it probably does something like that, and you can't see behind. Now they may be parallel behind there, I'm not too sure, but this doesn't look like it's 90 degrees to that angle there at all. It looks like it's a more acute line. So that all seems slightly strange to me, and I could be a bit wrong there, because there's a staircase that sits in the one other colour, staircase that sits up in here that winds down to this terrace, and I suspect this building here turns down, and then there's a staircase further down there. So when you look at the perspective and you look at the horizon line, there's obviously certain principles emerge, is that the orange lines will vanish in that direction, the blue lines will vanish more in this direction, and the purple lines will be vanishing over there. So we can begin to sort of think and say, well, if that's the horizon line there, I might start again now because I've now mucked up with the plan. The horizon line is somewhere around this windowsill in through here. So that's horizontal, and then these start to then come up steeper through there. So I always look for the horizontal line just to see where you are anchored in the drawing. That's where your eye is, and it's a very important line. If we can get the shapes working from that, the drawing will sit more comfortably in the on the page. So let's start again with the horizon line, and for the sake of the process, I'll try and use the different coloured pens. See how I go. I've not drawn this. I've drawn this once before on location about 2.5 years ago. So, but I haven't looked at it recently. So I'm just having a go. I've always said that it's important to find a key line that starts to generate the scale and heights of the buildings. And basically, so this purple line might be this purple building here, and then there's this depth of the stone on the corners. There's a render in between, and then stone edging on the buildings often in Lisbon, which makes a very nice feature. We know that's basically horizontal, so we can start to draw this door in, and then there's a little awning that sits there. Now it slopes out that way slightly, so you can just pick up a slope coming through, and then I might have already drawn that wide enough, come through, and then there's a door head, and you can see now this is quite pronounced coming up there. So if we can imagine all these lines are vanishing somewhere over here. We don't really know where, so we just have to sometimes just do that to help me with the angles. A lot of people do that. That should be slightly higher. What we're trying to do here is to start to set the tone or the scene of the drawing, what contains things. So if that's the highline, we can say, well, there's a dimension to there to get to this balcony. So that balcony is more or less there, and then it goes up even further, and the balcony comes out to this line through here, and it comes through and then comes down. And because it pokes out from the building slightly, there's a little area underneath. You can see now this line here vanishes somewhere down there, as does that line, and as that line, they all vanish to the same line. So this line is slightly steeper than that line. So it's just a matter of drawing that to show it. And then you've got the window in through there. There's a window in here, we can do that later. That's less important at the moment. So the other line is this one here, which defines the shape of the drawing, and we need to then imagine the scale of that space in relation to it. And so you can say, well, is it that's too narrow, that's too wide, is it probably around there, say? Does that seem about right? Maybe it is. Let's just draw a line there and just see how we go. Now the bottom of this line coming across on the drawing, and I do this all the time, I sight it across to that point in there, so that comes down to there. And basically these lines are coming up to the horizon line. So the vanishing point is really sort of around there, which means that you can then draw that line in, this line, and coming vanishing to there, this line vanishing to there. And again, I'm looking at the proportions of these things. These all look the same proportions, more or less. Often buildings might get slightly smaller as they go up the building. Georgian buildings start big and then get smaller and smaller as you go. And then, of course, you've got, that's really steeper there. And you've got that one extra steep in that point there. So that's okay. And then there's a bit that comes out here, and then it bends around, and that looks like it could be the same. So you've got to just look at that and try and get that as accurate as possible. So then the next one is the building in between, which is in a way the focal of the drawing, and then the deflected facade, which leads you down to the fantastic view into the distance. So if you think of the head of that, so we're basically around there and again, that's sloping down that way, that's sloping up that way. So the vanishing point somewhere there, say, so we could start to draw the lines through there, and coming down. And again, this point there is higher. It comes in at about that point in there. That might be a bit wrong already. You can see that. Nonetheless, let's just keep going. And that comes in higher than that little ledge in there, which is sitting down. We'll get to the slope later. That's quite tricky to work through. But we'll just start to set this up properly. first. Now, the most important thing about this part of the building is this length of wall, because if you make this too long, it doesn't look right. Make it too short, it doesn't look right. And this dimension is, it would seem to me, about halfway between the two. So there's the thing there, and then there's the building above again, falling down to there. So you can start to feel the and how do we know that angle there and that angle there? You just got to sort of eyeball it and get the proportions. That looks like a half a square. There's a little terrace on the top there, I think, and then the roof comes through, and then there's a line, this line here, and again you just need to be, you can't see the roof there, so that line is running through and that comes down like that, and this is running further down because of the nature of the, I'll just draw that in as this colour for the time being, so you get the sense that we're going down the hill. So from that, let's just see if we're sort of right. It's not too bad, perhaps. It's flatter, and then that comes through. That's actually the sill, so that should be slightly higher. So there you go. Despite my years of experience, I still get things completely wrong. That's the way it is. And then there's the windows that you can sit through there. There's a lot to talk about the way these windows are working, and they look like they're equal spaced on the facade, so it's just a matter of trying to get a sense of the scale of those. Each window gets slightly narrower as it goes further through. You can see that one there on the far left is not as wide as that one, and similarly the spaces between them are fairly big and they get smaller towards the end, so it just helps to be aware of that. And then there's these awnings that sit through on this lower level, and then there's the windows in through there. So this won't be a beautifully finished drawing, but hopefully we get the idea of how it all works. I might just raise that up. If you're working in pencil, it's quite easy to just fix all that up. If you're not working in pencil, it's a bit harder. And I do work in ink quite a lot these days, like I'm drawing now straight onto the page, so if you get it wrong, it's very hard to undo it. But you know, you can get the idea generally of what is windows down further as well, so that helps you to get a sense of that depth. And then at this point here, there's another roof that runs through and comes up, and there's a roof that runs up there, and there's a roof that runs down there. There's one that runs across at a lower level again. So you're just eyeballing these little sort of things through there. It's a bit hard to see this photograph of what's down there. I think the staircase actually runs down and down again there as well. So it sort of bends down and goes back around and zigzags through. This goes to Rossio Station for those that know Lisbon, and it's actually one of the major routes up the hill from Rossio. It'd be hard to come home from work, but catching the train wouldn't be too difficult, I guess. And then on the top here we get this, and also in the distance, when the sun cleared, is the castle run on the hill, and there's also, you know, a range of buildings that you can come through, and I did draw some of those, and you know, it's a bit hard to see from the photograph, and again you're probably abstracting slightly some of these things, but there's actually something missing from this one through there as well. So I'll just draw that as a tone in the distance. We can add more detail in here, and you can see there's roofs that sort of step up and overlap, and you can, you know, have a go getting the character right and all those items. You know, it's hard to get all that super accurate, and you don't really need to because it's in the distance, and it is just looking towards what the city is doing. So I think there's a doorway in that position over there, and possibly a staircase as well. We can just draw the shapes there. So you can start to see how the drawing emerges. It looks probably slightly too wide, maybe. It's very easy to be critical. And then we've got these arches which come in. And if you can see, there's always a depth to the facade in through there, and then often there's a transom element above. So there's pretty black, seems to me, and there's some hatching. So these can be then drawn. They're vertical on top of each other, coming through. Drawing an arch is tricky in perspective. And basically, if I was going to construct this in my head, I would find the centre line, and then you can draw the box it might sit in. If you think about it, an arch comes out of a square. So if you draw the box in, that's a tangent, and that's a tangent in through there. So and then in perspective, that perspective is slightly less, so that it gets smaller the further away. So you just have to have a go. I mean, I have a go. I know what I'm trying to get at, and if it's not completely right, it doesn't often completely matter too much. And then it goes up again. Then there's this wider transom or cornice line that runs through, and then there's the top of the page through there. Now I'll try and draw the bottom of the. And of course there's this, let's just draw those in, quite like the corners of the buildings. And what's nice is that its facade is darker, so finally I can start to add some hatching. In fact, I'm not being very patient with the cross hatching. It actually helps to be a bit more patient and just be careful with it, because it will look much better if you're careful. So there you have there's also a wall that comes up at the sill line through here, and there's a fence in there as well, which we can start to suggest with just some thick lines. And there's an archway in through there as well. This comes through. So let's just try and get the stair to work now. This line. The trouble with the stair is that it's not a straight flight. Actually, the stairs bend. You can see how they bend going up the hill, just to make it more annoying for everybody, including myself. But basically, we have this point down here, and we have a point there, which is below the stair, and that point there. So basically, that's the line through there. And I guess I'll use purple for the sake of this drawing. And then this line, I'm guessing this from that angle through there, and so you've got this sort of arrangement where it starts to fan out. So that's drawn fairly poorly, but the critical aspect is that there's a handrail that runs up. So I've just added a bit of this on here. Had to get some washing underway, so I had to stop for a bit. There's some nice tones in through here, and shading from the ground was slightly wet, I think, so it was quite pleasant. And the other thing is this handrail is really quite an important element in the drawing, which leads you down into this space. There's a whole lot of workmen in there doing their thing, which someone's sitting against the wall. I didn't put any of the workmen in the drawing because they were moving a lot and it was slightly dark. I wanted to concentrate more on the view, so let that arrangement come in there. And then that come around the corner. This building has this window. Again, the nice limestone, I think it is, framing for the windows. Very pleasant. Set back in slightly. It's a double frame. The windows are white, so we can just draw in the darkness of the, and then these often have some sort of amazing decoration of the balustrades that are quite beautiful and fairly hard to even work out how they do them. I'll just do them like that for the sake of this drawing. And there's I look at this and say, oh, well, there's a smaller window there, a big door there, there's a bigger door up here with the openings and bigger panes. That runs through there. Maybe that's a newer door, maybe it's just a different design door. There's some, I really like dark tones, so this frame actually is quite dark. So we can run over it and start to add more detail and textures of the stonework and run in those sort of shadows that run through the sketch. So it is a lot about setting up the structure of the drawing, anchoring yourself on the eye line, picking elements that reinforce the eye line, and then getting the proportions around that coming through. The bits that are higher come up. Made a bit of a mistake there. But you can definitely see the nature of the drawing as it flows through. I think this probably slightly looks too wide in the scheme of things. It could be slightly narrower. I often make things too narrow and tall sometimes, so there you have it. So here's the finished drawing. I just touched up a few bits and pieces, made a few windows darker, put a bit more tones on it, of this quite a remarkable staircase in Lisbon.